Welcome to my channel. You're in for a lot of creepy and thrilling stories ahead, but before we dive in, make sure to subscribe and drop a like on this video. Enjoy the ride.
The rain was coming down hard that night, like the sky had sprung a leak. Lisa stepped out of her office in downtown Boston, close to midnight, totally wiped. All she wanted was to get home, throw on some warm socks, and binge her favorite show on Netflix. She ran out into the downpour, cursing herself for forgetting her umbrella, and hustled to her car in the empty parking lot. The first few blocks were the usual late-night quiet, until something in her rearview mirror caught her eye, a shadowy figure. Lisa pressed her lips together but shrugged it off. Boston always had people wandering around, even at this hour. But as she drove further, she started to notice that the figure was trailing her. Keeping a distance, yeah, but not falling behind either. It was unsettling. She stopped at a red light, and her heart pounded harder. The figure stopped too, right behind her car, staring at her through the windshield. He was tall, wearing a hoodie that hid most of his face, and his arms hung by his sides like a soldier on watch. She tried not to look at him, but it was impossible. He just stood there motionless, lit only by the glow of streetlights reflecting off her car windows. When the light turned green, Lisa floored the gas pedal, pretending her old sedan was some kind of race car. The drive from downtown to her place was usually 15 minutes, tops. But tonight, every turn felt like a setup, every corner hiding something unknown. Then just like that, he was gone. She looked back and saw an empty road behind her. Must have turned off somewhere, she told herself, trying to shake the nerves. But then her phone buzzed. No number, just a message. Nice chase, Lisa. Goosebumps ran down her arms. She hadn't given her name to this creep. Fragments of news reports about a woman who'd gone missing last week flashed through her mind. She clenched her jaw and tossed her phone onto the passenger seat, too freaked out to even touch it. But her phone buzzed again. This time the message was short and clear. Take a right. Lisa couldn't ignore the sick feeling creeping through her. She turned on her GPS, double-checking her route, and realized she was coming up on the very turn he'd mentioned. She couldn't say why, but she found herself following the instructions, making that right turn. As soon as she did, headlights flooded the road in front of her, blinding her. She realized there were several empty cars parked along the side of the road, headlights all on like someone had set up this eerie scene just for her. She felt like she was the star in some twisted performance, and the spotlight was fixed on her. She tried to turn the car around and leave, but all the headlights blinked out at once. Now it was just her, alone in the darkness, surrounded by shadows and dead silence. Then from one of the parked cars, a voice rang out. Welcome, Lisa. We've been waiting for you. The voice was so familiar it made her stomach turn. It was her ex, the guy who'd vanished from her life 2 years ago, never to be heard from again. Something deep inside told her to freeze. She tried convincing herself this was all a sick coincidence. Nothing more. But there was something about this moment, this place, that felt like it was beyond random chance. And the longer she stood there, staring into the darkness, the more she knew. This was the beginning of a story she'd have been better off never knowing. Lisa's car had stalled on the side of the road. Again. She couldn't just chalk this up to random chance anymore. Darkness surrounded her, broken only by the faint glow of moonlight slipping through the trees. She tried dialing 911, but her phone flickered and went dead. The second her screen went black, a deep, grinding noise cut through the silence, like rusted metal dragging across concrete. Lisa froze. About 100 yards ahead, silhouetted against the pale moonlight, stood a strange figure. It was tall, impossibly thin, with arms so long they nearly brushed the ground. The figure swayed slowly, side to side, like it was mocking her. "Who are you?" she shouted, but her voice got swallowed by the darkness. In response, there was only a low, guttural laugh echoing around her. The figure took a step forward, then another, each move painfully slow but threatening all the same. Without a second thought, something primal took over, and she bolted, barely even registering the shape she was running from. Behind her, she could hear footsteps, pacing her own. Lisa ducked into the woods, running blind, tripping, gasping, but she couldn't stop. Branches scratched her face and arms, but she pushed forward. Somewhere up ahead, she spotted a faint light, and she turned towards it, unaware it would only lead her deeper into the nightmare. Breaking through the dense woods, she stumbled into a clearing. An old crumbling cabin stood there, lit by the glow of a fire. Its walls were slick with some weird, shiny black mold that seemed to pulse in time with her heartbeat. On the porch sat a woman in tattered clothes, her face hidden by long hair. When she lifted her head, Lisa's stomach twisted in horror. It was the woman who had gone missing from their neighborhood just a few weeks ago. "Help me! Don't let him take me," she whispered, her voice so faint Lisa could barely catch it. As Lisa stepped closer, the awful truth hit her. Somehow, this woman was dead. Empty, dark eye sockets stared back, silently pleading. Lisa took a shaky step back, but the cabin door slammed shut behind her, cutting off her escape. She turned, and there it was. That dark figure was right there, closer than she'd ever dared imagine. Lisa realized that each step she'd taken was only leading her deeper into the trap. The shadowy figure leaned in, and by the dim light of the fire, she saw its face, or whatever you'd call it. It wasn't human. It was ancient, twisted, with hollow black eyes and a mouth stretched wide in a horrifying grin. Cold sweat broke out on her forehead as she caught a whiff of its rotten breath. In a voice like broken static, it spoke, "You've been heading here your whole life, Lisa. Every fear, every nightmare, it all led you to me. You knew you'd come. And now, stay." Those last words echoed in her mind, reverberating into the depths of her soul. Lisa felt her body go numb as flashes of her childhood raced through her mind. Moments when she'd sensed something watching her in the dark of her room or lurking behind her on the street. Now she knew it had been him. Her whole life. Her vision blurred, then snapped back into razor focus as a sharp, searing pain tore through her, like claws digging into her soul. And then she heard his voice again, but this time from inside her own mind. He was laughing, feasting on her fear, her memories, her very being. Lisa had lost track of time. The dark woods, the cabin, that creepy figure, all of it felt like a dream she'd fallen into and couldn't claw her way out of. She sensed it right next to her, like a shadow stalking her steps, unseen but felt deep down in her gut. She tried to recall her life before tonight, but every memory blurred together, turning into this foggy haze. A voice tore through her mind again. "Are you ready? You've been heading here your whole life, Lisa. Remember." Then she saw her, a little girl, maybe around 8 years old, standing in a clearing outside the cabin. Lisa froze, heart pounding. In that child, she saw herself. Little Lisa, with messy hair and big bright eyes, stared back at her, filled with confusion and fear. "Who are you?" the girl asked, stepping back as the grown-up Lisa took a step forward. It didn't make sense, but that younger version of herself seemed more real than anything else in this twisted nightmare. I'm you," Lisa whispered. For a second, she thought she could remember something important, but it slipped away just as quickly. And then that figure appeared again, no longer hiding. It looked ancient and sinister, its shape flickering in the air like shadows cast by firelight. Its eyes were bottomless pits, voids with nothing in them but endless darkness. "I showed you your true face, Lisa," it hissed. "You were mine from the very start. You knew it." Lisa tried to look away, but her gaze was locked. Memories of her childhood flooded back. Nights she felt someone watching her from the doorway. Strange voices in the dark. Moments when she swore she was speaking to someone she couldn't see. And then it hit her. This thing had always been there. Suddenly it all clicked. This shadow wasn't stalking her. It was guiding her. With each memory, she realized that the darkness had been with her all along, like some invisible friend that always knew she'd have to come back to it. "Why did you bring me here?" Lisa's voice sounded unfamiliar to her. "You must finish what began years ago. I gave you life, filled your heart with fear so one day you'd return and give back what was always mine." Its voice grew louder, filling every corner of her mind. Lisa felt like her soul was slipping from her body, drifting into the darkness, about to become one with it. Everything around her started to blur, but just before she lost herself completely, She heard the little girl's whisper, "You can choose. You always could." With those words, the child disappeared, and Lisa realized she was at a crossroads. Two paths stretching out before her. One led to darkness, where that figure stood, calling her closer. The other was faint, stretching away as if leading back into her past, back to a regular life. The darkness took a step toward her, revealing its face. It was her own, twisted beyond recognition, a terrifying reflection of her fears. It reached out a hand, her own hand, pointing to the dark path. She felt her soul splitting apart, like she was being unraveled, just a scrap in the grip of this evil. "The final step is yours, Lisa. You'll become part of me. You'll be me." Lisa took a step forward, but at the last second, as her hand almost touched its own, she jerked back, turned, and threw herself toward the second path, the one leading to the light. She didn't know if it was an illusion or her one shot at salvation, but everything in her screamed to leave the darkness behind. Barely holding on to her senses, she ran toward the light, while the menacing laughter echoed behind her. The closer she got to the exit, the louder the voice of the darkness became. "You'll never escape, Lisa. You'll leave a part of yourself here. You'll always be mine." The darkness faded, and as she stumbled to the edge of the clearing, her legs gave out, and she collapsed. When she came to, she found herself lying by the side of the road, right next to her car. Everything around her looked normal, but she knew something had changed. She knew she hadn't left that forest with her soul completely intact. A chill settled in, one she'd carry forever. Lisa got up, looked around, and in that moment her phone rang. There was a blank message on the screen, and the final blow was the faint text that flickered there. "I'm here, and you'll be back." Lisa hit the end button and, without looking back, climbed into her car. She started the engine, pulling onto the highway, hoping it had all been just a nightmare, that one day she'd be able to forget. But with every passing mile, she felt more certain that she was carrying something sinister with her, something that would awaken in her again someday.
Don't forget to like and subscribe! New video coming soon. Drop your creepy real-life story in the comments. Maybe I'll feature it next time. Bye for now!